Welcome back to the How to Research lecture series. This is our final lesson on academic resources. Think tanks are institutions that typically write about specific policy issues. For example, there are think tanks related to the Middle East. There are also think tanks related to education, etc. Usually think tanks are made up of experts or experienced people, and sometimes these people have worked in government positions, so generally they're really knowledgeable about the policy aspect of issues being discussed. The other nice thing about think tanks is that their articles often use rhetoric that make for really good cards. So whenever you see something like the Center for American Progress, or Brookings Institute, or Heritage Foundation, all of those are different examples of think tanks that write a bunch of different articles, some focused on economics, some focused on education, etc. The problem with many think tanks is they have to be funded by someone. So oftentimes their articles have a bias based off of the people who fund them. For example, certain institutions may receive money from a country, and as a result, they have specific incentives to write articles that portray the country in a positive light. Therefore, not all of their articles are totally unbiased, which is something to be aware of and has come up in debate rounds before. One important thing to note about think tanks is there's a really useful resource that was made by Harvard that looks through all of the think tanks for you if you type in a couple of words into its engine. Here's a link to the engine, so as always, you can type this engine using the URL, or you can just look up Harvard Think Tank Search and it'll appear as the first results on Google. So what I want you to do is, using the same resolution we've been using throughout this lesson, which is resolved, the United States federal government should substantially reduce its restrictions on legal immigration to the United States. I want you to look up something related to the resolution and find 3 think tank articles that could be helpful. Pause the video and take a look at the think tank. I'll go and take a look at it myself as well, although I won't walk you through the articles like I usually do because we're not trying to assess the articles or their quality in this situation. We're just trying to figure out how does this engine or browser work. Welcome back. Hopefully you got a chance to play around with the search engine a little bit. I'll show you an example of how you can use the engine. So, for example, I looked up immigration restrictions in quotation marks because it says you can search using Google conventions. So when I press search, a bunch of different examples of articles from different think tanks pop up inside of this search engine. So we can see Brookings, which I'd mentioned earlier. Migrationpolicy.org is a think tank devoted to immigration rights. We can see Pew Research and other different ones as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how this engine works, and we'll continue on with the presentation. A couple of free academic archives you should be aware of include SSRN, which is the Social Science Research Network. It has a lot of really good social science and humanities articles. Most of them are on there for free. They have qualified authors, although they've not gone through the type of peer review process most of the time that we've talked about in the previous lesson. Another example of a free academic archive is Archive. That sounds or looks like archive, but the X is supposed to stand for the Greek letter chi, so it's pronounced archive. This is a repository of scientific articles. It's especially helpful on any economics topics or if you're looking for hard statistical data. And the final one that's free is Soch Archive, which is the same exact thing, a free repository, but for social science research. Again, the majority of articles on these websites have not gone through the rigorous peer review process that makes evidence so much better, but they have qualified authors and they're often from reputable institutions, so you can leverage that, but remember it's not going to be as good as a peer review article. So your turn. I want you to look up something related to the resolution and find one article on each of the repositories that looks useful. That's 3 articles in total. I'll want you to pause the video and look up on SSRN, Archive, and Soch Archive at least one article from each. Welcome back. Hopefully you had some fun looking at those different repositories. So now we're going to move on to talk about paywalled academic archives. These are archives where most of their articles, if not all, require you to have a type of subscription or require you to pay money to access their articles. We'll talk about at the end of this slide how you can get them without paying, but this is something you should be aware of, and these are ones that publish journals that have peer review processes and are likely to have articles that are better than the ones on SSRN and Archive and SochArchive. The first one is JSTOR, has a lot of journals on it. A lot of the things that you look for on Google Scholar are going to appear on JSTOR. The next one is Hein Online. If you're a part of the NDCA, Hein Online you can actually access through the NDCA using your member code. Hein Online is very helpful, has a lot of legal research, and it has a lot of the similar journaled articles like JSTOR. The next one is LexisNexis. This one also has a lot of legal articles and can be really helpful if you're doing any legal research on a topic. And then the last one is Taylor and Francis Online. This is the one I probably saw the most in high school, even more so than JSTOR, since it has so many journals on it and appeared very frequently in just about every Google search I did when I was looking up research for topics. So if you want to access these, there are ways you can get access. A lot of schools do have access to these different repositories, so you should ask your librarian to see if you have access. So why use these websites? These websites can be much faster than Google. If you look up specifically on SSRN, Archive, SochArchive, you're much more likely to find academic articles than just browsing through Google, which has a bunch of news articles in addition to academic articles. And the faster you get at it, the more you'll be able to succeed in debate. Research is one of the most time-consuming things that debaters do. It's a lot of fun, but if you can try and get faster at it, you'll be able to find more evidence faster, and then you can also practice other skills in addition to research. Ultimately, academic sources are very useful. They often have citations and literature reviews. When I say citations, I mean they have bibliographies at the end, and they also have footnotes. You can then look at those bibliographies and footnotes to direct you to other sources that will be helpful. When I say literature reviews, I mean that many of these academic sources, at the beginning of their articles, conduct an analysis of all of the literature that has been written on their specific topic. That way, you don't have to try and do all of that research on your own, because these people have already done it for you and they're experts in the field. Just as an ending note, academic articles can be complicated, but it's worth learning how to use the archives that allow you to access academic articles. The academic articles are written by experts. They're pretty much guaranteed to be better than any news source who's just writing stuff about the academic articles written by the experts. Additionally, this is a primary source. Like I was saying, news articles just cite these sources, so why not just cut out the middle person and look at the academic articles themselves? Finally, you want to use conclusions and abstracts to guide you if methodology is confusing. Conclusions and abstracts provide a helpful resource, especially for finding cards. You're not likely to find a card in the methodology section, so you can skip over that if it's too much. Just read the conclusion and the abstract, take what you need, and you'll be able to find something great from experts. Thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful and that you enjoyed our How to Research series.